Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining another episode of William Steele True Crime. If you like what you've been seeing, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. As you guys know, I'm on Rumble now and Instagram. Everywhere these are found. We also started up our podcast, which is on iHeartRadio. I can't even remember all the names of them. We have a distributor that puts out the podcast, so you can check out my podcast, William Steele True Crime. But I need to build my subscribers up, so I'm very, very grateful for everybody joining us. Thank you for joining Inmate to Roommate. I want to give a shout out to my producer, Joe Ruzer. Incredible guy. Let me be myself on the show. And shout out to Sharp Entertainment and A&E Network. Very grateful for the opportunity. And for anybody who's interested about a season 2, I can't officially say anything. I will say this. Just in a few months, we've had 11 million views of the show, clips and everything on TikTok. That's just TikTok. And so if you're getting that, and it became the number 2 reality show in the country just under Jersey Shore Vacation. So if you think that they're not doing a season 2, I don't know what to tell you, but I can't officially answer that question. Thank you so much for your support. Stay tuned. I started a new TV show here in the Midwest of my own with a radio show, and more information about that's going to be coming out. Also, my public relations firm called Steele Spotlight Media. So we thank you. And what I want to get to is my guest. He's been standing by patiently waiting for me to get past my my rough start here. But the gentleman you see on the screen is a dear, dear friend of mine, Gary Greenberg. Gary Greenberg is my co-author on this book. Here it is with the original cover. This is The Sex and the Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. As you see on the Inmate to Roommate show, A&E was nice enough to let me discuss this book on an episode, and it really brought a lot of attention to victim advocacy. So Gary, as you can see, is right here with me, William Steele. Gary is an interesting guy because we met many years ago. I guess he has the exact year down, but probably 15, 18 years ago at least. And
2002.
2002. And we met under very weird circumstances. Real quickly, there was a guy being framed for a murder that he didn't commit. And I came forward as a defense witness and testified for the defense. Gary happened to be jury foreman in that trial. So we remained friends. The guy got acquitted, thank God. He didn't go to prison. But so let me tell you a little bit more about Gary. Gary, aside from being a phenomenal rugby player up until middle age, as you can see, he's still in at least 30-something years old. But so even up until his, in his older years, he's, I don't know, I don't want to give away his age. The man plays prolific rugby. I think he slowed down a little bit. Athlete. He's a true crime writer. He's a crime writer. He's an editor. He's a current editor of the National Enquirer. So if you ever want
I'm not the editor. I'm a contract writer for them at the moment. I have been an editor in the past, though.
Okay, so your titles bounce around over there. I know there's always been a lot of changes. So this man has written some of the most famous stories you have ever seen in the National Enquirer over the last 13, 15 years, at least. And he wrote an article about the case that's in the Globe, and here we're putting it up on the screen, and where he was on the juror, and Roy Thompson was acquitted. So, but anyway, so Gary is alum. Is that the correct term? An alum of Pennsylvania State. Is that it?
Alumni, yes. Alumnus of Penn State University, yes.
That's right. And where he studied writing and amongst other things and partying and all that good stuff. So, Gary, without further adu, let me introduce my dear friend, Gary Greenberg, my co-author.
Well, thanks a lot, Bill. It's taken a little while to get around to talking, but I'm used to you rambling on a little bit. In our day while we were writing the book, we would have phone conversations from prison. And on the prison phone system, you only have, 20 minutes?
Yep.
And we were always getting that little signal way before we got anything done because Bill was always talking about his terrible roommates and the conditions and this and that and all his gripes and moans. And by the time we got to actually talking about what we had to talk about, which was the book, our time was generally up.
Right.
Yeah, it's true, that story. I was on the selected for the jury of this murder trial, and one of the witnesses for the defense was Mr. Bill here, And his testimony actually contributed to us declaring that the guy was not guilty of a second-degree murder.
Thank God for him.
But after that trial, well, during the trial, the judge, his name was George LaBorgia, and he went on actually to become a Supreme Court judge of Florida. He was actually the Chief Justice. I think he currently still is. But he knew I worked for the tabloids. He used to fool around and say, "Oh, Gary, you can't write about this in the National Enquirer." And somehow Bill must have heard that, because after the trial was over, I got a call from the defense lawyer, Ron Chapman, and he asked if this guy who had testified could contact me. He had great stories to tell. So I said, why not? And Bill started at that point just writing me letters about his pretty interesting career when he was involved with jewel thievery and other stuff. And over the years, we developed a correspondence through letters for the most part of it until we got into the Durst project. But we've known each other since 2002. And first time I really saw him was on Roommate to Inmate.
Inmate to roommate. Inmate to roommate.
Inmate to Roommate. I'm sorry. Yes.
That's funny. Yes, because when I got out, I don't even know that we had a video call. We spoke on the phone quite a bit. Because it was some things that we were revising, I guess, with the book or trying to get on my feet. I was living in the Midwest. As everybody knows, I come to the Midwest, was living with a kooky couple that were hardcore Seventh-day Adventists, and here I am, a Brooklyn guy with all my humor and sarcasm and, trying to rush and get on my feet and sell books and write books and, then filming a reality show 24/7 pretty much. And all that played out. We can't go into a lot of detail because we have more things coming up, but yeah, so Gary saw me on that, and then, excuse me.
From what I remember in the trial, you had hair.
Yeah, I lost. Everybody says, just get rid of the rest of it and go bald, whatever. I'm comfortable in my own skin. So Gary and I have been friends, and many times, the prison calls, anybody who's been there has a loved one locked up, they're all timed and the phones are recorded and all this nonsense. And so I would somehow always get out of my cell or near a phone around his lunchtime. And I can't tell you how many times the poor guy burnt the soup that he had warming up. He said, "Hey, I burnt it on the soup."
More annoying habits there, calling me during lunch.
Right. So, Gary, let's get into, so, wow, it's just so much to talk about with you, especially. And for my fans, you guys know I was just in Florida and Boca Raton, where I used to live in South Florida, and we're going to be doing some stuff down there shortly. So we went down there a few months ago for filming, and Gary and his beautiful wife, Nora, and Roxanne, their wonderful rescue dog, they had us as guests, my fiance, Mary, and I. And so, here we go, a guy who was jury foreman, and I was in jail getting ready to do, God knows how many years when I screwed things up in my own life. And he stayed a friend and a good guy all this time. He believed in me. And I tell you what, I don't want to get deep into it because I get choked up, man. But I'm very grateful that you believed in me and you kept encouraging me, and you helped me write this Robert Durst book about my experiences with Robert Durst.
Yeah, well, you know what, Bill, I wouldn't have done it unless I got the sense from you that you wanted to better yourself. You really wanted to make good. You wanted to, in some ways, make up for some of the wrongs you'd done in your life. Yeah. And I sensed that. And even though we drove each other crazy at times, certainly over some technicalities with the book and the writing, but eventually, and we broke up a couple of times, as I recall, but then we got back together. And it just all along, I recognized that you wanted to come out and make good, and that impressed me. And I think that it's been proven true, because since you've been out, you've done a lot to advocate for crime victims. You've done a lot to try to expose people who are pretty bad individuals who deserve not to be on the streets. And you've overall tried, kept a positive attitude. I think the people on the show can see what kind of person you are. The people, the viewers of Inmate to Roommate can see what kind of person you are, that you have a funny way to express yourself, and you're a pretty likable character.
I appreciate that, man. Um, yeah, I remember. Well, let's not belabor the haters, but there was certainly plenty of people because it wasn't my first time in prison. It wasn't my first experience with the criminal justice system, and sometimes people just have a hard head. In this case, as my audience and my fans know, most of them, my mother was mentally ill and she passed away while I was incarcerated, and my sisters took off with a large inheritance, and so there was a lot of loss and a lot of heartache this trip. So I took some college courses and started, really wanting to just change my life and do different things. And right now, I'm in the process of getting ready to release two other books. Um, Gary, as you know, I put out another book about Ghislaine Maxwell. So that one there is doing okay. I appreciate my fans who have purchased it and supporting me. But I have another book coming out about my secular journey, my life story, and then the other one is going to be my faith journey, like my story of faith and how my faith, and I certainly know I am a Christian, but I'm certainly not perfect. But my faith and my reliance on the higher power, God, has really brought me through because I know He's always there for me, even when everybody else fails you or leaves you alone. I believe God's always there for you.
Yeah,
So
well, you know what? Another thing that interested me about you is I'm a storyteller. I like a good story. And you just are a good story, and you have a lot of good stories to tell. You're pretty good at telling stories yourself. But that's what interests me as much as anything is that we're just, you're filled with good stories, whether it's about your life in crime or whether it's about your reclamation or your finding of religion or whatever it might be. There seems to be never ending amount of drama and in a lot of cases melodrama in your life.
absolutely, absolutely, Gary, tell my viewers and my fans a little something that about your career with the tabloids, because so many people are fascinated. You know, about some of the stories. Like I recall a story about the kangaroo boy, kangaroo kid. It was a kid who had a car accident and they grafted on kangaroo legs. There was an article about that. I
Well,
remember
that
all
was, there's a lot of misconceptions. When I tell people I work for the Enquirer, uh, most of them, well, the first thing they'll talk about is Bigfoot and aliens, which the Enquirer really hasn't done in decades.
right.
We're mainly celebrity news, true crime, and human interest stuff. So that's kind of the first misconception. And the Kangaroo Kid was actually written for a publication called the Weekly World News, which was actually a satire magazine. It wasn't meant to be taken seriously.
Right.
The Kangaroo Kid, as the story went, was this Australian kid who got lost his legs in a horrific, tragic car accident. About the same time, a kangaroo was tragically killed by an errant boomerang. And so they transplanted the kangaroo legs onto the poor kid, who became the only kid in his class who could dunk a basketball.
Right.
And the funniest thing about that story is the kid they used for the model was my son Glenn.
Hello, Glenn.
But
I
Glenn was
remember.
the
I
kangaroo
remember.
kid.
I remember when you were at your house. I think it's in that very room you're sitting in, which is your home office. You have that headline hanging on the wall somewhere, or maybe
Actually, it's in Glenn's room where you
in the
stayed,
bedroom.
Glenn's old room, and I,
Right.
I have it framed basically that article because
That's
it's just so
exactly right.
funny.
That's right. It's in your son's bedroom where you. He's in college now, so that's where me and Mary were. And I looked
He's
at that.
actually in graduate school. But the Enquirer, people always ask me how much stuff we make up, and the truth of the matter is we really don't make up anything.
Right.
Other than the terminology and the screaming headlines and all that. But we can't afford to because people sue the tabloids all the time, and you have to have sources that will tell you that something happened. Now, they might not be accurate, fully accurate. In some cases, they might be making something up, but it's not us that's making it us. It's not us that's making it up.
Be a source.
And the Enquirer, for all the criticism it might get in various circles, uh, actually the world of journalism has gone the way of the tabloids because everything is becoming more tabloid journalism. So the
Yep.
Enquirer was actually ahead of the curve. And the Enquirer in its heyday um, really had some of the best journalists in the world because they paid more than anybody else. So there was a lot of very, very talented people putting that paper together. They've since undergone a lot of changes. There's not quite as much staff as there used to be, but they still continue to produce a quality product for the kind of people who like to read those stories.
It's like an iconic American paper, and it's just fascinating because, in the interest of full disclosure, I've been profiled several times in the National Enquirer. One time, 2 weeks in a row, with Inmate to Roommate, and with my Maxwell book. And I think it was almost every single time that I've ever done a story for them, they always verify everything. They always, have the lawyer look at the legalities of what's being said, and NDAs and all this stuff. So they actually run a tight ship. They don't just take random tips from strangers with no verification, no corroboration. So I could vouch for what Gary just said from a personal perspective. Now, I've been in the New York Post before, the Sun from London, and the Sun version, and on TMZ. I've been in there. We had 7 million views, and I can tell you, all of them, God bless them, but none of them did any of the due diligence that your paper's done. It's pretty impressive that people have such a misconception that people can say anything to the Enquirer. That's not the case. So, what is the biggest story that you guys ever broke that nobody would believe at the time, and later you guys were proven completely true, and you were the first ones to say it? I know there was a huge, I think, a political-based one, but there's been a couple of them over the years.
Well, there were stories that we proved. For example, Gary Hart, who was running for president, he was a senator back in the 70s, running for president.
Monkey business.
That's right. And we had the picture of him on the monkey business boat with Donna Rice in his lap. An editor named Larry Haley apparently broke that story. Haley broke a lot of stories. I used to sit right across from him, and he'd tell me about them endlessly. Usually when he was done with his job, but I was in the middle of my job because he organized and supervised the reporters. So once they wrote the stories, it would then go to the writers. So his job was done, and then my job began where his job kind of ended. So he'd have nothing to do, and I'd be really busy, and he'd start telling me all these incredible stories. He also was one of the guys who found O.J. Simpson wearing those quote-unquote ugly, what did he say? They were
fraternity shoes?
Yeah, they were Bruno Magli shoes.
Bruno Magli, yeah, that's what's it.
Yeah, but he said he would never, O.J. said something about he would never wear those god-awful shoes or ugly shoes, something like that. He
was standing on the sideline of a football game, and a photograph with him was
right. And Haley was on the team that found that photo.
I remember.
But the biggest seller of all time for the National Enquirer was Elvis in the Box. When Elvis died, they bribed one of his cousins, I believe it was, to sneak a photo of him. And that particular issue sold 7 million copies in a week, which was a record for the tabloids. It's a pretty big number.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this incredible interview with Gary Greenberg. And please hit like and subscribe. Please hit like and subscribe, or check out Gary's books in the bio.